Welcome to Birken Monastery's live stream in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I'm Ajahn Sona, and we're back for another week. Pia.
Ajahn, our first question today is from the live stream from Kai in Texas, United States. Good morning to the monastery. Pleasure to see you in the States, Venerable Sir. I had a question about relationships and the Buddha's advice on meritorious virtues in a partnership.
Well, it's extremely important. I mean, what's the opposite of meritorious virtues in a relationship? Lack of virtue in a relationship. So if you want to end your relationship quickly, just abandon all virtue and morality. So, of course, the Buddha is very encouraging of this. An encouragement to be supportive in a relationship, and that means you serve the other person, and the other person serves you, and you're generous and kind, and upright and virtuous. And then you have the duties of administering your household, which are done responsibly. If you have children, you have to take care of them and educate them. You have business, then you have to do it competently. If you have people working for you, you have to treat them fairly. If you're working for somebody else, you need to be diligent and honest and show up on time. And when the other person needs encouragement, uplift, then you try to provide that. Sometimes the individuals in the marriage can't they can't be each other's psychologist. And quite often I get people coming to me and asking me about family members, difficult relationships with family members and so forth. And I usually tell them not to act as their psychologist, that person needs to go and find a psychologist or a spiritual teacher, and that person should have competence in giving advice, but most people are not able to give competent psychological advice, especially to family members. But they should be. So people come to you wanting advice. Family people wanting to work out some past stuff, but it's really not all that useful. Quite often we give each other bad advice if we're not experts in that area. So you advise them to go and see experts and get good advice. So that is, in brief, the advice of the Buddha in terms of relationships. Meritorious, virtuous behavior is always a good thing. Yes.
Next question from the live stream is from Dusty in Utah, United States. I've seen the three poisons described as greed, anger, and ignorance, and other times attachment, hatred, and delusion. How would you explain the three poisons?
Yeah, the original words, there's lobha, dosa, moha, which is lobha is greed, and dosa is anger, and moha is kind of a dullness, lack of understanding, lack of sense of reality. In general, greed, hatred, and delusion are the root problems for humans suffering. And the opposite, generosity, kindness, clarity, are the cure. So what you experience directly and you can feel are greed and hatred. Actually, you can't feel your own delusions. Delusions are misunderstandings about reality. And if you felt that it was a misunderstanding, it wouldn't be a misunderstanding. You would not be deluded, you would be aware. Delusions are that it absolutely seems real to you, and you don't question it, but it's a wrong understanding about reality. And that's the root of the greed and the hatred. So you can see, for instance, if a person was raised at a time in history when everybody around them thought that the earth was flat, and then they presume that, they act and in accord with that. They have no idea that it's not. But if they decide not to go on a sailing ship because it might fall off the edge of the earth, that will change their behavior in the world. So the delusion is getting good realistic advice about the nature of reality. And the Buddha says particularly the facts of that everything is impermanent, that everything's changing and flowing, and that a lot of what we presume to be under our control is not under our control. Our bodies, for instance, we identify them with our bodies as if they were ourselves. But because we have very little control over the body, it gets sick, and we don't want it to get sick, and it won't get better, even though we want it to get better. And because we presume it to be ourself, we're upset, disoriented by this. So the Buddha is saying, focus on the reality of impermanence, of change and impermanence, and also to keep in mind that it's dangerous to attach to it. So they also use the word attach. And that's another way of attaching, is grabbing onto something which can't be grabbed onto. Everything sort of vanishes in your hands. So you get in touch with that reality, and then emotionally you'll feel much more at ease in the reality, because you'll be in tune with the real nature of things. And you won't have the distress that people have. You know, if the mail doesn't show up or something, people get angry. Is not reality. They're not emotionally in touch with reality, that the weather just isn't interested in their plans. And things don't always go according to plans. And that if you are insisting that reality listens to you, then you'll be angry and frustrated all the time. What you can feel directly is anger. You can know you're angry, and you can feel it. It's an unpleasant feeling. By the way, it's always accompanied by unpleasant feeling. Anger is never pleasant. And desire or greed is sometimes pleasant, accompanied by pleasant feeling, and sometimes unpleasant feeling. But you can actually experience these directly, and you can actually do something about those. So the delusion is dependent on reinforcement of anger and greed. So anger and greed are the food of delusion. They strengthen your ignorance, actually. And how do you diminish your ignorance? How do you turn ignorance into knowledge? By reducing your anger and greed. And your anger is, the basis of your anger is unwise attention to the fault. And the basis of your greed is unwise attention to the beautiful. You're paying attention unwisely to these things. And that feeds back into strengthening your delusion about nature of reality. If you want, and you will change drastically, your sense of life and everything will change drastically if you address the anger and the greed itself by looking at things wisely. So when you have a fault, or anybody else has a fault, or your house has a fault, or your pet has a fault, or the politics have a fault, if you see the fault wisely, it won't be accompanied by anger. You will just see that's the way it is. People have faults. Buildings have faults. Countries have faults, etc. and you will not be accompanied by anger. And that will feed back into your knowledge loop, and it will diminish your ignorance and increase your knowledge. And with desirable things, you have to analyze them take them apart in order to see how they really are. So lots of people overspend on, say, a sports car or something. They want a red sports car. But if we take it apart, say, well, there's just rubber tires and metal and paint and glass. You take that apart, you understand what that thing is. It deconstructs your craving and desire for that, and then you feel more content. So some people think, well, what would life be like if I wasn't angry and had full of desires? Wouldn't it be boring? No, it will not be boring. It will be, you will feel content. You will feel at ease. You will feel not angry. Now, one of your favorite feelings is to be around good friends because you feel positive around that. So that's what it is to be not angry. And when you have enough, you feel content and full. And that's what it is to be without desire. So that is what generosity and kindness are. Generosity is the feeling that you've got plenty. In fact, you can share it and you enjoy sharing it. And kindness is the best of the feelings. So that feeling of friendliness, loving kindness is the thing that everybody wants. Not everybody knows how to get it. But by the way, it doesn't come from outside. Sometimes when you associate with certain people, the feeling of friendliness and the enjoyment of that sense, you attribute it to the other person, but it's not actually coming from the other person, it's coming from you. And this is very fortunate, coming from you. And this is very fortunate because you can learn to generate this feeling of friendliness, and then you are walking around in a sense of well-being. If you don't do this, you can easily spend your life feeling hostile, angry, agitated, annoyed at everything. And you might think you're supposed to be, but really it just, it's like having an illness all the time. And you can cure that illness. You don't have to feel that way. Life and the world is not going to be according to your desires, but you can be completely okay with that. You can allow the universe to be itself without scolding it all the time. Yeah. Okay, well, let's go on to the next question.
Next question is from the live stream from Gustavo in Barcelona, Spain. Dear Ajahn, I have heard several times that, quote, I have reached a period in my meditation practice where I am at a plateau, like I am blocked and can't move forward, unquote. Now I am experiencing it personally. Any advice on how to re-energize the process?
Yeah, that you should get used to the fact that that is the normal way that people learn. You get stagnant, and you continue to practice, to educate yourself, to learn, change scenes, etc., and then you bump up from that plateau. And sometimes it can seem hopeless, like you're stranded on a plateau and you'll be wondering, can I actually ever move on, or have I reached my limits here? But it is amazing, if you keep putting in the causes, then one day it seems like a sudden shift. But there's two ways of thinking about things: gradual learning and sudden realizations. And it goes that way, doesn't it? You suddenly realize something. You can have a bath or something and you suddenly realize, I don't need to do that anymore. Why am I wasting my time with that? That's a sudden realization, but how did that realization come about? It's actually a gradual development. So this is the way humans work, is that we're gradually putting in information, drop by drop. And then one day, we reach the top of the vessel and it overflows. So that's the realization moment. The famous Archimedes, Eureka, he was looking for a solution to the measurement of metals. And he had strained his intellect, could not find a solution, so he decided to have a bath. As he's getting into the bathtub, he notices the water rise up, and he realizes that his body has got all these contours and shapes, but the rise of the water is very even. It can be measured precisely. So according to the story, he jumps up naked, runs out into the street and yells, "Eureka! I've got it." Notice that. But he puts in a lot of effort meditating on this, thinking about this, and then he stops. He's just getting into a bath, and he's relaxed. And at that point, because the work had been put in, he makes the breakthrough. And that's how the gradual information in. And then arranging good situations for the mind to process this. Quite often we interfere with, the mind actually knows the solution, but we interfere with that by continuously asking it, what's the solution? What's the solution? What's the solution? It just needs some time to respond. This is the solution. Notice this is similar to when you forget somebody's name, and you're at a party and think, oh, what's his name? Oh, geez, what's his name? What's his name? What's his name? What's his name? And then you can't think of his name, and you go over, you're getting a drink, and Bob. Bob comes into your mind. Bob, right, Bob, yeah. How did that happen? You had stopped asking what's his name, and then suddenly your mind provides the answer. Where did the answer come from? There's two parts to your mind. One is down, it administers the filing cabinets down there. And the other part is the superficial part. And what we're doing is we're asking that to check out the files of memory and so forth. But we keep asking it. So we call it up the stairs. Come on up here. I want to know something. Oh, what do you want to know? I want to know that guy's name. So it's just starting down the stairs to go to the filing cabinets. And then you call it back up and say, what's that guy's name? I'll go and look. What's that guy's name? I'll go and look. What's that guy's name? I'll go and look. Finally, you stop asking what's that guy's name? And then it has time to go in the filing cabinets and gets the name, Bob, comes back up, and then you're doing something else and it hands you the name, Bob. So you see there's two parts to your mind. And you need to, if you want to know something, you ask clearly and then stop asking. Your mind has heard you ask already. Don't keep asking it again and again. Just ask it once clearly. What do you want to know? And then let it go through the processes that it does in the depths of your subconscious, your unconscious. And in the meantime, don't clutter it up by making a lot of noise and talking and so forth. You just wait quietly. So do you notice that you're just going to bed or something like that, and suddenly you realize something, or you suddenly have a new perspective on things. And it's usually while you're silent. You can't be talking all the time and get this good information. So this is the nature of meditation, why being silent is quite often the solution to things. Silent is waiting. In theistic religions, they're talking to God. So the idea is like you say what you want to know, but you wait for God to answer. And it's waiting in silence. So then, say the contemplative Catholic tradition, be waiting in silence for God to speak. In Buddhism, we don't attribute this to God. We're really talking to the deeper parts of ourselves, but we have to also be quiet and listen and just be available for answers. And that's, a lot of people don't know. They think they have to think it through, repetitively think in order to get a solution. But actually it's better to just wait and be open in silence, because the deeper part of your mind is actually processing, and that's where answers come from. Okay, let's go on to the next question.
The next question is also from Spain, from Marian in Luarca, Asturias, Spain. Dear Ajahn Sona, I see samsaric existence as a multi-level video game. Each player is changing flow of consciousness, being reborn again and again in the different levels of the game, depending on its comic performance. The Buddha cracked the code and made the rules explicit, sharing them as Dhamma. Is this a proper simile? Some physicists say we are living in a simulation. Does the Buddha fit in the tradition of simulation hypotheses?
Yeah, the beauty of the Buddhist approach is this. Like, you know, when I started at university, I was interested in philosophy. And what happens usually in philosophy is they start you back with the Greek philosophers. And it's quite an experience if you're 18 years old to listen to what Socrates thought, or Plato thought, or Aristotle thought. And it's very impressive. But then they critique that and go on to the next philosopher, some Roman philosopher. And then they critique that and they go on to the next philosopher. And you find out that you're not actually taking philosophy, you're just taking the history of philosophy. And you end up, it doesn't really answer any things. It just gives you a huge body of knowledge, some very smart people thinking, but you end up with nothing to commit yourself to. Buddhism is different. The Buddha, right off the bat, he's not interested in just any ideas. He decides there is one important issue in life, and that is suffering. Especially if suffering is unnecessary. So he begins by just stating, the thing that I'm interested in, and which is very, very real, and we can directly know it's real, is suffering. Unnecessary, problematic experiences, emotional and physical. Now we should address that if it's possible to get over the suffering, the problems, then we should. And this is how you do it. So whether we're in a, what do they call it, a video game or a simulation, whether we're in a simulation or not, there is suffering. There's suffering in the simulation. And if we're not in a simulation, there's still suffering. And you can get over the suffering. You can, first of all, reduce it greatly. And if you're very fortunate and you work well and you understand things, you can completely free yourself from all of this unnecessary psychological suffering. And it doesn't matter whether you know if the universe is infinite in space or infinite in time, or whether we're in a simulation or not in a simulation. The reality of suffering is directly experienceable, and the reduction of that is directly experienceable. So that's how the Buddha dismisses or gets around speculative philosophy. So this idea, whether are we in a video game or is it all a dream? It doesn't matter whether it's a dream. Are we dreaming this? This is called idealism, like where there is no physical reality. It's all produced by the mind. You know, there's whole philosophies that hold that. Others are realistic. Just what we see is real. It's just like it as we see it. Others say we'll never know. There is a reality, but we don't know exactly what that external reality is, but we do know our internal reality. All of those are answered. All of those can be bypassed, and not wasting endless amounts of time and years trying to figure that out, because it's the wrong question to ask. Is, what can I do about my personal experience of unsatisfactoriness? The emotional unsatisfactoriness, the suffering, so forth. I can address that myself, and I can learn how not to inflict that on myself. So that is the Buddhist reply to all of these speculations. You also mentioned physicists. So some physicists say this and some physicists say that. We can bypass we concern with the final knowledge about physics,
used as defense when operating in the world.
The Sun Tzu's Art of War, I haven't read it, so I can't tell you. But I have heard a lot of people say it helps them in business, it helps them in life, and I'm sure there's a few generals that say it helps them in war as well. I've heard a few snatches of it, a few things, but I can't address it extensively. Actually, I must get around to reading that one of these days. So, yeah, that's the next question.
Next question from the live stream is from Alec. Hi, Bhante. What makes a sankhara comically active, as in dependent origination? Is it ignorance of the three characteristics? And is karma only made in the mind?
Yeah, so we'll have to unpack a few of these terms for the general audience. This word sankhara is what we would call volition or intention of the mind or intentional action. So that's when we go to a court of law to try a criminal case, we ask, what was the intention? Was it an accident or was it deliberate? What was your intention? Was it long planned or was it spontaneous? Was it a crime of passion? Was it a coldly planned crime? So that's what the sankhara is in Buddhism. And so Alec is asking, what makes it active? How does this work? Because we have this theory, this idea called karma. So karma involves, the Buddha defined what karma is. Karma before the time of the Buddha was simply action in the world. You just acted in a certain way. That was your karma. Your acts were karma. The Buddha goes deeper, and which we hold in the modern world. It's not just how you act, it's what you intend. What's your intention behind your actions? And that is what has strong results. And we would call this, what's the moral intention in your actions? And I think that's what in a court of law is. We ask, what were your moral intentions in your actions? So this is a breakthrough in history. The Buddha says, what the consequences of your life are determined by the intentions that you had in your life, the intentional decisions, the intentions behind your speech, the intentions behind your actions. And that is what plays out and has consequences. This word karma has now found its way into the Oxford English Dictionary. It's an English word now, right? You get in a car accident, somebody says, that's your karma. Or you win at the slot machines. By the way, we just passed through Las Vegas, so slot machines are all... You win at the slot machine, oh, that's your karma. No, that's not your karma. That's called vipaka, the fruit of your karma. Your karma is the intention, which is like the seed, and then the results are the fruit of that intentional action, and that's called vipaka. Well, what's the relationship between this making intentions, intentional speech, intentional action, and what comes back from that? What is the resultant from that? How does this relate? Is there any system to it? Can you understand it? Yes, you can. So first of all, in a simple way, we could say good, positive intentions with speech or action will always have good results. They will never have negative results. Whereas negative actions, negative intention, speech, and action will not have good results, it will always have negative results. So if you plant a cherry seed, cherry pit, you will get a cherry tree. You will not get an apple tree. If you plant an apple seed, you won't get a cherry tree. You'll get an apple tree. It's always in accord with the original intention. So this makes the universe a little less random. It's not, why are things happening? They're happening in accord with cause and effect in the moral dimension. So you can actually look forward to good results if you decide systematically to put in good causes, positive causes based on generosity, kindness, clarity. They will have wanted results. The results will be wanted. If you put in negative types of intentions based on greed, hatred, confusion, you will get negative consequences, unwanted. You won't like it. you won't like it. I mean, we see it around the world here. People do things, they commit crimes, violence and so forth, and they get unwanted results. They end up in prison. It's not a fun place. Or they end up getting shot or killed and so forth. There's negative results from that. And you can sort of, sometimes you can see it. It's very clear. You hit that person and then they hit you. You see karma and results. Sometimes though, a perfectly peaceful, good person gets hit. But they didn't hit anybody, but they get bad, negative result. We would say that somewhere in the past, the intention is what was created somewhere in the past, and it's just having its fruition now. It's very sophisticated, the later analysis of this, how this happens, and why some karma happens quickly. So if you say, good morning, and you smile at somebody, and then they say, good morning, and they smile back at you. That's instant karma, that's unseparated. But the other person may not be feeling well, or they might be angry, and you say, good morning, would you like a cup of coffee? And they're sullen, and then later in the afternoon, they come to you and say, yeah, I'm sorry about that, I was just in a bad mood and everything, I don't know what was, but thanks for offering the coffee or saying good morning. So that's karma with delayed result. And then sometimes you can see in life is that some good deed that you did 30 years ago to somebody, you end up meeting them and they say, you did something really good for me at such and such a time, 30 years ago. And I've always wanted to thank you for that, So that's separated by, in fact, or they might give you something that, I want to return the favor to you. I want to give you this gift because you did something for me many years ago. So this is cause and effect separated by time. So the monks during the time of the Buddha and afterwards were interested, why are some deeds have the cause come very close afterwards, some in the middle and some long time. And we even theorize that some will not occur in this life. You might have put in good causes, but it will arise in a future life, separated by time. So they analyze it, and they analyze it down to what we would call now in microphysics. Each thought that you have has a number of parts to it. So they analyze, this is called abhidhamma, or the analytical thinking around these issues. And it's very similar to modern chemistry or physics. We talk about atoms, and then it turns out that atoms have parts. They have electrons and protons and all this kind of stuff. So they take it apart to the atomic level, thoughts. And thoughts where the intention is strong in the first third of the thought have close results in time. And then in the middle third is middle distant recurrence. And then in the last third of the thought has 17 parts to it. This is they've analyzed it down to thought moments have 17 actual parts to them, and the intention structure can occur in the first third, the middle third, or the last third, and that will determine the distance in time before this results. Amazing. I mean, how do they come up with this? Partly is that they're not just using analytical thinking. The first process to do this is to watch your own mind, to see how your own thinking works. And so so monks don't have any other things to do. They're not married with a job and all that kind of stuff. They have all the livelong day to just meditate and look into their own mind. And the first process they have is to train the mind, not to wander around, not to have scattered thoughts, to bring it back, train it, train it, train it. It's like training a dog, by the way. An untrained dog is a nuisance. Bark all night, run into, chase the traffic, dig up the neighbor's lawn, get into a fight. Not fun. A trained dog, though, man's best friend. It's a trained dog. You have a seeing eye dog or a rescue dog, it's incredible, you know? This thing is a great benefit. So that's the trained mind. You see with the animal, you train the animal's mind. You can also train the human mind. And the untrained human mind is a nuisance too. That is, they are going to make noise all night. They are going to run into traffic. They are going to steal your stuff. But a trained mind, what a blessing. A trained human with good moral dimensions, it's a beautiful thing. They train the mind and they look into their own mind and they calm it down. And so parts of our mind have not been discovered by us. Ordinary person may not understand some parts of the mind that can be accessed because normally we're distracted by the outside world. But if you sit for weeks, months, years, just investigating this, you can find your way into parts of the mind that normally people don't find their way into. And this has capacities beyond the normal. It's supernormal. So this is like deep stillness meditation. And in that, once you slow the mind down like that, you start to be able to actually see the nature of thoughts as they arise. It's like looking at things in slow motion or looking through a microscope at things. This little world of germs and microparticles was not discovered till, the 19th century? Once they developed the lenses and they start looking into it, there's whole worlds in a drop of water. There's worlds in a drop of water. So this meditation structures is kind of like a magnifying lens, microscope lens. You see the microscopic processes of the mind. This is very different than modern psychiatry and psychology. They're looking, that's based usually on just the psychiatrist, the psychologist is not especially gifted. Hopefully they're just normal people that are not insane. And they're looking at what is the cause of insanity and various types of structures like that. That's analytical. You can't access the precise nature of thoughts in a normal person unless you have deep serenity and clarity. And then you start to see how things work at a deeper level. So this is the basis for this process. I spent a bit of time on that, but it's very, very interesting. Yeah.
Next question from the live chat is from Maria. My ex-girlfriend took her own life 2 years before we eventually broke up. During our time apart, I blocked her from contacting me because I still harbored feelings for her, but her bipolar disorder made it difficult for me to consider reconnecting and potentially restarting our toxic relationship. I chose to focus on healing before considering a friendship. Even after 3 years, I still love deeply and feel immense guilt for blocking her, wondering if I could have prevented her tragic end or reconciled with her. However, I made this decision to safeguard my own mental health from our toxic past. How can I overcome this overwhelming sense of loss, guilt, and longing?
Yeah, that's a very common experience in life. We feel responsible for things we're not responsible for. And there are certain religious ideas that I think are unfortunate. They make people who are not qualified attempt to solve problems that they're not able to solve about other people's minds. So, a person with severe bipolar or schizophrenia or their minds are not accessible to, an ordinary person's ideas of helping them. This is a famous story about in relationships as well. One thinks one can rescue some other person. You get into a relationship where, oh, well, I'll fix him or I'll fix her, and then you just waste your time. That's why I suggest that people you don't become amateur psychiatrists. If a person needs mental health care, they need professional care, and that hopefully that psychiatrist or that psychologist also will realize that a lot of people won't get cured, and doctors as well. You're simply not able to cure a lot of illnesses, and psychologists, psychiatrists are simply not able to cure a lot of mental illnesses as well. And you have to be able to be okay with that reality, otherwise you're going to burn out. And so what you're seeing is the tragic nature of life, and this is a primary theme in Buddhism, is that there's a lot of suffering out there. Lots of suffering which is not addressable. It falls out of the reach of ordinary people. You can't fix somebody. Some mental illnesses are not possible to fix, and if you get too closely involved, it will waste your life and your time as well, and you will end up with no satisfactory solution, but you will have wasted your life as well, and you will have suffered unnecessarily. So this is the big picture, and this is what one sits down to meditate and look over the big picture of things. You imagine these billions of people, and some of them are physically ill, unrecoverably physically ill. Some of them are mentally ill, and we have to look at that without without increasing the suffering by being grief-stricken about this, because that doesn't help. Being grief-stricken about this doesn't help. It actually increases the amount of suffering. So you have to determine, should I feel suffering because other people are suffering? Should I suffer as well? Or not? And so that's the question you ask, and the answer the Buddha gives is, you shouldn't. You should refuse to increase the suffering in the world by unnecessary suffering, because it's just the nature of reality. Illness happens, mental illness happens. You can be compassionate, but compassion is not sympathetic grief. It's just loving kindness for those who are suffering. Loving kindness, by the way, feels good. So when you have loving kindness for those who are suffering, you don't suffer, you feel good. In the midst of the sorrowing crowd, you feel well, and you need to be well. You don't want your doctor to get sick, right? You get in a car accident, you're all banged up, broken limbs, bleeding, and so forth. They take you into the emergency ward, and that doctor comes over. Do you want him to burst into tears? No, please do not burst into tears, doctor. Fix me. So is that doctor lacking compassion? No. Compassion is not bursting into tears. It's developing skills. So the doctor goes to medical school to develop skills to fix your broken bones or staunch the bleeding or diagnose you. That's the compassion, is educating yourself, learning. That's the compassion. right? And so you learn the skills, the spiritual skills of being amongst people who are suffering and so forth with clarity. And if you can offer them advice that helps them, that's great. But be prepared to also fail in this as well, and not to suffer because you fail. Right. Let us go on. Next.
Next question is from Sean in Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. What is your view on travel? Do the wise highly regard traveling the world, or are they content staying at home?
While we're traveling, the Buddha says, let the wise one settle or wander. And it doesn't matter. You can settle or wander. Sometimes in your life, as you're learning, it's important that you don't people wander because they're restless. So you have to learn to stay still until you can be content staying still. And then sometimes people become very attached to staying still. So then it's important that they actually move around and wander so they can find themselves at ease and peaceful in the midst of change as well. So you'll see these two tendencies in people. One is that they can't stop traveling or wandering, and others that they're afraid to leave their house. Everything has to be exactly the way they want it, and they don't want to travel. These are both attachments. So one should be able to both stay in a single place contentedly, and also to, when it's sensible, to travel and wander, but with contentment, not due to restlessness. Yeah.
Next question from the live chat is from Alex. I told a Theravada monk about my past. He said, quote, air meditation is not for you. Meditate on an image of another person while experiencing joy, unquote. It's hard. Should I accept it? How can air not be good for me?
Well, I don't know. I don't know why he would say that, because I don't know you. Maybe I do. Have you ever been to Birken Forest Monastery? I don't know. But air meditation is really, one form of air meditation is breath meditation. You're just paying attention to breath. It's very universal. It's widely taught. So just paying attention to your breathing is air meditation. It's not for everybody necessarily, but he's saying have an image of imagine another person, and so this is kind of probably a practice of loving kindness. So you can, it doesn't have to be a single other person. You can imagine large groups of people and so forth and cultivate that. But depending on your personality, so I don't know you, and I don't know why he would say that, but some people find breath meditation or air meditation very difficult. It is difficult. It's high demand on attention. Loving kindness is somewhat more accessible, but some people find it terribly difficult as well. They prefer to do the breath meditation. So that's all I can say about that. Yeah.
Next question from the live chat is from Jay in Singapore. Dear Ajahn, quote, I, unquote, may get distracted in the day as a lay person with responsibilities, but I always end the day with the understanding that all that has happened to me is not me, not mine, not self. Is this skillful enough?
It may be. It's known in the results. So if you've reduced suffering in your life by this practice of reflection on not I, me, mine, then it's working well and it's successful. So you'll have to self-evaluate that, whether it's working for you.
Next question from the live chat is from Zenios. Dear Ajahn, I live in a country where Buddhism is not prevalent, so when I try to talk about meditation or Buddhist practices to my family members, they don't really understand where I'm coming from. or think I'm into culty things, which is understandable to some extent. How should I deal with this correctly to put my family members at ease that I am not doing something crazy, because I'm not very good at articulating intellectually what I've read and heard about Buddhism?
Yeah, you shouldn't, it's not your responsibility to make everybody understand. They either understand or not. And quite often, it doesn't matter, even if you decide to play the violin, they think, well, why do you play the violin? Why don't you play the piano? Or you want to go off to college and study physics, and they want you to study art. Or, everybody, you can't live your life for everybody else's expectations. And you can't explain yourself to everybody. You have this interest. You find something beneficial about this. And this is very difficult to communicate. If people aren't interested or coming towards you, then it's a waste of time. So you have to be content being misunderstood. It's all right to be misunderstood. Just don't suffer over it. And don't presume that you will be able to explain it to your family, ever. So then you relax about that. They may never understand that. Yeah.
Next question from the live chat is from someone else in Panama City, Florida, United States. I would be interested in hearing your thoughts on J. Krishnamurti.
Yeah, in the early days, Krishnamurti was quite popular. The books were quite popular in the 60s or even in the 50s. And I read those things. They're very nice. He tends to reject like formal disciplines and training and so forth. He called himself a non-teacher. It is quite a interesting history, He seemed to be very popular. A lot of people appreciated him. What I found reading these books was that kind of like Chinese food, there's no calories in them, there's some airy language there that is not very specific, and you come away afterwards and you can't quite figure out what just happened in terms of any sort of systematic, concrete ideas. He himself, I would say that he was flawed in his personal life. He was brought into a situation. He was selected as a boy and told he was the world teacher, by some people. And at 30 years old, he realized that he isn't, and he said, "I'm not the world teacher." But he didn't have much alternative for a lifestyle, so he ended up continuing teaching, and people thought he was a great guru. But I don't think he could live up to the expectations. And there's quite a bit of evidence of corruption in his life. People are surprised to hear this, because he was one of the gurus that everybody thought, he was really very genuine and so forth. But there is a book called In the Shadow of Krishnamurti, which a close associate who knew him for a substantial portion of his life wrote. And I can't verify it personally, but he was less than pristine in his behavior. So a lot of the gurus of the 60s and so forth were disappointing in their personal lives. They talked the talk, but they didn't walk the walk. So that is a bit about Krishnamurti. Yeah. Okay, I think we have one more question, and that'll be it.
Ajahn, our final question today is from Mariah from the live stream. Ajahn, how much can and should imagination play a role in Buddhist meditation? Is it advisable to use visualization when perceiving the breath, for example, or mental imagery during metta practice?
Yeah. So memory and imagination is very useful for certain topics, especially the cultivation of loving kindness. You imagine people and then direct loving kindness to them. You remember people who are easy to practice loving kindness to. So certain types of meditation are very require the use of both your imagination and your memory. Certain types of meditation, like breath meditation, requires that you abandon your imagination and your memory, that you just stay present with the breath. And so that's a special training. Most people have difficulty with that because they're mostly almost continuously imagining and remembering. But it's the imagination and memory well directed is the case. That's what meditation is. Most people's memory and imagination not well directed is scattered and random. So we will bring it to an end in Santa Fe, but we will see you next week in Santa Fe still.